Is Rajan going to join today?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He'll join a little late, sir. He has a meeting, but before his intervention, he will be joining. Sir, apart from the panelists, there are five, in fact, senior people who will be making an intervention, starting with Mr. Narendra Wadhwa from SOCHM. And then we have Chainraj Roychand sir from Bangalore. He is an educationist. And then Rajan Navani sir, he is the CII chair for India at 75. And Captain Vaibhav Rupade from the Merchant Marine. And then we have Shri Ashok Motwani sir. He has written a book on the Indus River.
नाही ठीक आहे ते असं लाईट समोरून आला ना तर ते काय मागे लावलं ना ते खूप अंधार होतं ते बंद करावं लागतं ते मागे नाही समोर पाहिजे लाईट
Sunil sir, welcome. Thank you for joining. We had about 189 registrations, sir, and there will be some more people who will be joining directly also. So we hope to have a good participation. Dr. Barucha sir, thank you for joining us. Gopi Shetty, thank you for joining us.
Stop the video.
Gopi, nice to see you.
Good evening, everybody, for the opportunity to join the meeting.
Captain Swaroop Bangara sir, thank you for joining us, sir.
Good afternoon, Phil. Thank you very much for the invite as well. Thank you.
Six.
Like to join and be seen with all these people. Good for you also. At least you're seeing so many new, not new, all new.
Manojji, namaskar. Thank you for joining us. Ji, thank you for joining us. Arun Saigal sir, thank you for joining us, sir. Ram Kumar sir, thank you for joining us. Commodore Raj Kumar sir, thank you for joining us, sir.
It's indeed my pleasure. It's wonderful to join you. Thank you very much.
नमस्कार जी
Chandraji, namaste. Thank you for joining us.
नमस्कार नमस्कार कैसे हैं
बढ़िया sir.
all good afternoon to every dignitary and present who's present नमस्कार sir मेरी आवाज आ रही थी अर्नब जी?
जी sir, आवाज आ रही है आपकी.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's time we'll get started.
Yes, sir. 4 o'clock sharp.
Thank you all for joining us. It's a webinar of, I think, great importance. We at MRC have been working on the underwater domain awareness framework. We have been conducting multiple such webinars to reach out to senior people to get their views and also to be able to tell them about the UDA framework being progressed by us. And in that series today, we have a very, very eminent panel. Some of the people will be joining us in due course. We have Sri Suresh Prabhu ji who will be joining us. He is the Sherpa to the G20 and G7. He has been a minister for a long time earlier, and now in his position he is in cabinet rank, and he has been extremely interested in the maritime domain, and he's been very kind to us. I had a conversation with him, and he has been very encouraging. We have Admiral R.K. Dhawan sir, former naval chief, chairman of National Maritime Foundation, and sir has been closely associated with multiple strategic organizations, and he continues to guide many of us in taking this forward. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. We have Dr. Pramod Chaudhary from the industry. We have a diverse panel, and Pramod Chaudhary, sir, represents the industry. He was he's the founder chairman of Raj Industries, and he was also the former president of MCCIA, Chamber of Commerce at Pune. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Captain Alok Bansal, sir, Director, India Foundation, an author, and not just as part of India Foundation, but sir has been very, very closely associated with the strategic community for a long time. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us, sir. We will have Sandeep Unnithan joining us in a while. He is the executive editor at the India Today group, and also he has been covering the defense sector very, very closely, and today he'll be speaking about the submarine acquisition. He has recently written an article. Sandeep will be joining us very soon. And apart from this, we also have five very eminent people who will be making a short intervention today, starting with Wadhwa sir, Narendra Wadhwa from ASOCHEM. He heads the finance vertical in ASOCHEM, followed by Sri Chandraji Roychand. He's an educationalist, and he runs a very big private institution. And we also look forward to collaborating with us. And I think in capacity building, the role of academia is very important. And Chandraj sir, thank you very much for joining us today. Then we have Sri Rajan Nawani, who's the CII chair for India at 75. He'll be also joining us very soon, and we're very happy to have a very, very eminent panel. Then Captain Vaibhav Rupade, representing the shipping community. He has a lot of experience, and he's now very actively involved in in helping out the shipping community. And I think the seafarers are going through a lot of distress at this time, and he's very actively involved in that part. And then we have Sri Ashok Motwani ji, who's an author and been associated with multiple strategic discourse. Thank you, Ashok ji, for joining us. So without much of delay, I would like to invite our first speaker, first panelist, Captain Alok Bansal sir, Director at the India Foundation, to give his opening remarks, sir.
Thank you, Arnav. I'm really grateful to be speaking to this important panel. The subject that's been given to me by Arnav is Indo-Pacific, the prevailing geopolitical realities in the Indo-Pacific. Because I'm really not much of a knowledgeable person as far as underwater domain awareness is concerned. But geopolitical realities is what I have been asked to speak on as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned. We need to understand that the global focus is shifting from the Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific for some time. And in fact, today, the globe is looking at Indo-Pacific with renewed vigor, renewed interest. When we look at Indo-Pacific, we need to appreciate that the first 4 countries in terms of largest gross domestic products in terms of PPP are in Indo-Pacific. That is China, United States, India, and Japan. And of course, if we take it further, amongst the top largest 7 economies of the world in terms of PPP, 6 are in the Indo-Pacific region. Taking it further, if we actually take it to other issues, when we look at countries with largest foreign exchange reserves in the world, you'll be surprised that 9 out of the 10 countries of the world with largest foreign exchange reserves are in Indo-Pacific. So it is quite clear that Indo-Pacific is the area where actually the global interests lie. This is the area where economic activity is taking place. And of course, when we talk of it, this is also the area where we have the bulk of the hydrocarbon reserves of the world. When we look at proven reserves, more than 50% of the global reserves actually lie in this particular area. In fact, the Middle East alone has almost 45% of the global reserves of oil. And when we look at natural gas, in fact, the countries with largest natural gas reserves are all Indo-Pacific regions. So when we talk of economic activities, it is going to be the Indo-Pacific region, which is now the focus of the global economic activity and will continue to remain for a number of years to come. Now, what is the geopolitical realities that's actually emerging out of it? The changes that are taking place in the global geopolitics actually emanate primarily from the China's rise as a major economic power. When we look in terms of purchasing power parity, today China has already overtaken the United States as the largest economy of the world. In terms of its global power, it is still a little much far behind the United States. But China's rise is actually going to be the biggest challenge as far as the geopolitical environment is concerned, as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned. So at the moment, we have a geopolitical dynamic play whereby we have the United States, which is the dominant global power, which is a status quo power, which is interested in maintaining the status quo that exists as on today. And we have a major revisionist power, which is China, which is not very happy with the global status quo and wants to revise the geopolitical environment as far as Committee of the Nations is concerned. And in its quest for revising the global geopolitical order, China has been indulging in what is the biggest infrastructural project ever taking place in the history of this entire globe, and that is the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, where we are seeing a large number of connectivity and infrastructural projects are being undertaken by China, which is cutting across Eurasian landmass as well as Indo-Pacific region with various maritime passages, accesses, and things like that. And to counter this, we have where the dominant power, the United States, has come out with what has been talked of the Quad, that is India, Japan, the United States, and the Australia, a conglomerate of the democracies to check this so-called autocratic rise of China, which has been an autocratic power. This is by far the major geopolitical construct or the major geopolitical divide that we see in Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is also very important because the global focus is also into Indo-Pacific, because today the biggest threat to the globe emanates in terms of cross-border terrorism. Now, when we talk of cross-border terrorism, the ideologically driven terrorist movements, most of them have their genesis in this part of the world. Today, terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, though they have been weakened considerably, continue to affect the global community in a very big way. they and their large affiliates continue to affect different parts of the globe, and we keep seeing manifestation of their growth from time to time in different parts of the earth. Now, if this menace of terrorism has to be eliminated, again, we need to focus on Indo-Pacific. Now, coming to all these things, we have looked at terrorism in the maritime domain. We have low intensity conflicts which have been going on in the maritime demo, which have been talked of LIMO. So now the next major issue is with China's rise, China also realizes its geopolitical limitations. And one of the biggest limitations that China has been beset with is that its access to the open oceans is extremely restricted, and whatever little coast it has is also dominated by other countries. A cursory look at the geography of China will let us know that if China has to access the open oceans of Indo-Pacific, it has to pass close to other countries, many of which are not favorably disposed towards it. If it has to go to Northeast, it has to pass close to South Korea. If it has to go due east, it has to pass close to Japan. Or if it has to go southeast, it has to pass through the narrow confines of Southeast Asia. And consequently, China realizes this vulnerability, and as a result, it has been actually now seeking an enlarged and enhanced maritime domain for itself. And that is where we see this 8 dash lines which China has been projecting, which has actually been claiming the South China Sea as an internal waters of its own. And this actually has pitted it against rest of the world, which is actually now committed for the freedom of navigation. And that freedom of navigation is what we are seeing, that freedom of navigation patrols that are being taken by various countries of the world, especially the democracies, and the Quad is now going to come into confrontation with this sort of an attitude that is actually coming up. So that actually brings us to Indian Ocean region, where Chinese Navy is now moving into it. Since Indian Ocean, unlike Atlantic and Pacific, is an enclosed ocean to a very great extent with a number of choke points. The China has been moving into this particular domain using its underwater platforms, which is where I think Chinese Navy has grown in greater strength. And I think that is where we need to understand the significance of underwater domain as far as Indian Ocean region is concerned. This is also an arena which is actually full of natural resources and also provides a huge market for the burgeoning industries of the China. The demographic crunch which China has been facing of late has actually led Chinese to shift bulk of their production facilities outside mainland China to many of their satellite countries all along the different prongs of Belt and Road Initiative. And this actually requires the Chinese would want to remain connected with all these prongs of these production facilities which they are setting up in different countries, different parts of the world. And this would bring them into this Indian Ocean region, where we, of course, see a contestation between China and the other countries which are actually trying to oppose China's rise. As far as India is concerned, in our neighborhood, with the sole exception of Bhutan, we have a bulk of our neighbors which have already joined Belt and Road Initiative. Pakistan is, of course, a very, very strong component of Belt and Road Initiative. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a very, very significant component of Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, besides Pakistan, many of the other countries which are quite friendly to India but are still have joined BRI. That includes Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Myanmar. So most of our countries in our vicinity are to some extent amenable to China's economic domination. And that actually creates a complication for India. And in times to come, India would have to compete with this economic overbearing dominance of China that is actually manifesting in our vicinity. And to counter this, I think we have been trying to create a bigger grouping of countries, not an alliance, which I would like to say. And that is where we have been actually trying to get the democracies to come and support us so that we are in a position to counter this growing dominance of China in our neighborhood. So this is, to sum up, the overall geopolitical scenario that I visualize as an individual in Indo-Pacific. This is my personal viewpoint. Of course, there'll be differences as far as this is concerned. And what we see is in this particular new Indo-Pacific, the geopolitical environment, one of the weakening powers have been the European powers, which have been by and large retreating from this particular area. And of course, we now have this new groupings which are actually contesting for domination within Indo-Pacific. One is, of course, a huge revisionist power called China, and which is being challenged by a conglomerate of democracies, the Quad, which is India, Australia, the United States, and Japan. And as this contestation increases, what we are seeing is that there is, of course, the Eurasian powers, that is Russia, etc., are now tending to side with China. And this is actually creating a divide, which could probably lead to a new Cold War in days to come. We have to decide as to how this new geopolitical environment is going to affect us, and we need to be prepared to deal with eventualities that emerge out of this new geopolitical realities that are emerging in 21st century. With that, I'd like to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a very good start for us to continue with the webinar. And thank you very much for giving a very, very insightful perspective. Thank you very much, sir. Now, I would like to make a small presentation on what the underwater domain awareness framework that we have proposed is all about, and also try and plug in some way aheads in terms of how we can take it forward and some of our work in terms of taking it forward. So I'll be trying to cover under these following heads. 21st century, a new global order, and from an underwater perspective, it is important for us to understand in the previous maritime engagements or engagements by the naval forces, it was in the temperate waters or the polar waters. If we all remember the Cold War period where the maximum technology development happened, and even for the underwater domain also, huge amount of effort was there. And that was in the temperate region. But today, the engagements are in the tropical region, and tropical waters have a very, very unique kind of situation, and the technology that is required has to be very, very different. And with that, I would like to start my presentation. And even if you look at the Indo-Pacific strategic space, which is today probably the #1 strategic aspect being discussed and being talked about, this is also the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. I mean, largely the Indian Ocean part and the South China Sea that we talk about. So the same kind of challenges and opportunity exist. So when we are formulating our way ahead, and particularly in the case of underwater domain, we need to be mindful of these two important aspects. Now, strategic relevance of Indian Ocean and South China Sea, Captain Bansal sir has already given a very good perspective. I would like to quickly touch upon few aspects will be relevant to my presentation. Economically, we understand, I mean, there is a huge amount of traffic in terms of energy and trade. Politically, this is a very, very volatile region, and there are pre-modern states, so it is very easy for extra-regional powers to meddle with the domestic politics. And so there is huge amount of fragmentation in the area because it doesn't suit the extra-regional powers to allow the nations in this region to consolidate. Military interventions are also now becoming more and more common. We've started seeing a lot of naval exercises and also certain face-offs that we have been seeing in South China Sea and also in the Indian Ocean region. Now, most important thing is that growing nations, including India, is now giving higher priority to submarine deployment. So that is a worrying factor in many ways. I mean, one is not just the military face-off, but also from a safety perspective. My submission is that are these nations countries like Burma, Bangladesh, Indonesia, we had a very unfortunate incident recently. I don't want to club that incident with anything, but safety is also very, very important. And now we have nuclear submarines operating in this area. So we have to have an eye on that aspect as well. Now, most important thing that I want to bring out here is the hardware versus software. Many of these nations are definitely procuring the hardware, but are we acoustically ready? I mean, I can tell you the degradation of performance in the sonar range is almost up to 50 to 60%. So the same kind of strategy that you deploy, or the strategies that were deployed by the developed countries or the Western powers, do not apply here. And there is a huge scope for indigenous effort, and there is a huge scope for looking at site-specific local R&D. Now, coming to the Indian Ocean region and our position in the Indian Ocean region, there has been significant focus by the government now, and we are aware of multiple, the topmost of that is the Sagar vision by the Honorable Prime Minister. So, but how do we make it happen on the ground? I mean, at the apex level, the vision formulation is one aspect, but to my mind, and also some seniors who have come on our platform earlier have acknowledged that without the underwater domain awareness, realizing the Sagar vision, Sagar vision has got three major components. One is the security challenges, the growth opportunities, and India's leadership role in the region. So how do we manage all these three things is very, very important for us to kind of talk about probably in this webinar as well. Now, to come up with some specifics of the Indian Ocean region, most of the countries are pre-modern states. So the governance mechanism and is a very big challenge. Capacity building is something which has a lot of scope for us to work on. And just to talk about the Kuznets curve, if you look at this curve, whatever growth we talk about, it has to be sustainable. So unless we take care of the sustainable aspect, and the ecology aspect, I think these developments will not be good for us in the long run. So the Kuznets curve is a very, very standard way of discussing this aspect. So today, I think in the Indian Ocean region, we are on the first dotted line. So there is a huge focus required in terms of policy to ensure that the environmental degradation is taken care of. We see these binaries. I don't think I need to explain this. These binaries are something we need to, not only within the nation, we see different, the maritime sector itself in India, I think is governed by more than 17 ministries, agencies, authorities. So, and sometimes we do feel that there is lack of synergy among them. So how do we take care of these binaries? And the post-Cold War realities is something we need to keep track of. During the Cold War, security got highest priority. But today, the political reality is such that we need to work together. The security will never get the highest priority. And we have seen post the Cold War, the security investment or the security prioritizing has faced multiple challenges in terms of resource availability. And also they have faced challenges in terms of the environmental groups, pushing them to submit environmental impact assessment. And so we have to have a comprehensive view, and that's what probably we are trying to address in the UDA framework. And technological challenges, as I mentioned, we need to look at that. It's a very, very bizarre situation today, and we can we are seeing multiple strandings in our waters. These are some of the incidents that have happened in the West Coast, and the first is a 40-feet blue whale, which was stranded south of Mumbai. Second was a 50-feet bride whale, which was stranded in the coast of Karwar. And the third one is a 90 pilotless whales that stranded in Tuticorin coast. So sustainability is definitely a big question mark today. And the Maharashtra coast alone in 2016 saw 80 big whale strandings in 1 year. So these are manifestations of a deep disturbance in the ecosystem, and we need to be very, very mindful as we take this forward as a nation. Now, in terms of the geopolitics of UDA, sometimes in India we hear that the tropical waters are extremely challenging and all that. But I want to bring to your notice how different countries in the world have addressed this challenge. The ASIAX, I mean, after the Cold War ended, the American establishment initially got very complacent that there is no more challenge to their might. But towards the end of the last century, they realized that China has definitely built up a lot of underwater capabilities, particularly submarines, and the Americans need to do something about it. So, given the sensitivity of the period at that time, it was an academically led, because for them to recognize the tropical challenges and do something about it, field experimental R&D is what is required, and we call it a tropical shallow water experiment. So 6 universities led by the University of Washington in 2000 launched what is called an ASIAX, and they identified in the first phase, they identified multiple locations in South China Sea and East China Sea for experimental data collection. In the phase 2, to avoid any diplomatic backlash, they involved a lot of local academic institutions also, and there were about 20 universities, including universities from China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and they carried out this operation. Now, in this, takeaway for US is very clear. They wanted data, they wanted to, and University of Washington had worked quite a few years to build the models which they wanted to basically validate in this experiment. But for China, it was, I was in Shanghai in 2016. I met a lot of people there. For them, it was very, very clear that an exercise of this nature, they were not ready at that point. So they participated to learn. And so you will acknowledge that since that time, I mean, this ASIAX went on for about 3 to 4 years, and China has been working on this. And after that, they had set up multiple acoustic institutes to develop their acoustic capabilities. And South China Sea, we know after that, as but typically what happened was, one very interesting incident was in 2016 when President Trump was elected, but he had not yet taken over that 20 days period. There was a US Navy drone which was captured by China. It was a simple messaging that because after ASIAX, the US has been continuously deploying acoustic arrays and underwater drones in the South China Sea to continuously validate their models, which they had basically built up with the ASIAX. So, but China now in 2015-16 was very, very clear that we are not going to allow this, and that was a indication to the US. And you know, after that, during the Trump era, there has never been any kind of letdown on the confrontation. But from a Chinese perspective, it is very interesting for us to understand that in 2015, they announced what is called the Underwater Great Wall Project. And all of us know that a project of this nature takes at least 2 decades of preparation. So China was well planning this, and they were working on it. And it was only in 2015 that they declared this. This is a huge project in South China Sea where they have deployed multiple sensors, static sensors, and dynamic AUVs with sensors to build their underwater capabilities or build their acoustic capability. It is a well-funded government project with multiple institutions taking part in it. I was in Singapore in 2016, and my lab was also helping them out or contributing to this. And they were very open about taking help wherever it is required, but they know where to draw the line and where not to kind of allow access to anybody who is not supposed to get access. So this is something we need to keep track. And now we know where China is and how they are building up their acoustic capacity. Now, MH370 is another very, very classic case. It is a aircraft that went down with a Malaysian airline, of course, but with almost 95% Chinese citizen. But the global community gave Australia the lead to take to work on the search and rescue, or search and recovery, not rescue. I met the project team leader in 2016 when I was in Shanghai. There was a conference and all the underwater specialists were there. And what was very interesting for us to know is that before they could actually start deploying AUVs, which is inescapable, for the search operation, it took them 1 year to develop the capability, develop the underwater charts of the right resolution. Now, I want to bring you back to the Indian Ocean. 2 years back, in 1 year, the Chinese deployed more than 24 research cruises in the Indian Ocean for data collection. And the 6 other countries other than China had deployed 26 such missions. And this includes nations like US, France, India, Germany, and the rest of the 6, if I can use that word. But you can see the aggressive nature of developing these capabilities, because deploying underwater drones requires a very, very different preparation, whether it is for underwater search and recovery or whether it is for any kind of deployments. If you have to deploy an underwater AUV, you have to have that kind of capacity building, which has to be done in peacetime. Otherwise, we will really fall short. Now, when we talk about the maritime domain awareness, it is very important for us to appreciate that this term actually came after the 9/11 in the US. The global community led by the US started using this in a lot of strategic discussions. And back in India, or in this part of the region, it was after 26/11. The Indian Navy also has been working very, very aggressively, and a lot of infrastructure development has happened. But the problem here is that these are two event-driven aspects, and it is, more importantly, it is a security-driven formulation. So what happens is the participation of the other stakeholders becomes quite limited. And that is the worry. And particularly when we talk about the developing nations where we cannot prioritize heavy investment into the security, we need, when we look at capacity building, it has to be a slightly different approach. And that's what we would like to talk about. Now, when we specifically come to the underwater domain awareness, there are 4 distinct stakeholders. Maritime security, whether it is internal security or external security, blue economic entities, environmental regulators, and disaster management, and science and technology. Just to elaborate a little bit, we have a problem of Chinese aggression in our waters. How do we detect submarines? Our own deployment, we have a strategic submarine also. How can we enhance our deployment? Underwater domain awareness or digital ocean, whatever we want to use, will bring a lot of transparency, and we will be able to effectively and efficiently deploy our own assets also. We had this Kasab incident. He came by a surface boat. I don't think next time we expect it to, anybody like Kasab to come by a surface boat. There is so much underwater robotics happening. What is our preparedness for underwater domain awareness? And the 4th picture is of migration. This is going to be a serious issue, particularly in our East Coast. I will not go into the details of it, but this is another issue we need to be very, very mindful of. And what is our preparedness for such security challenges? Going forward, in terms of blue economy, there is huge amount of resources available in our waters. The government has also been very, very serious. They have been looking at, the budget itself has announced a huge allocation, more than 4,000 crores. But I think there is a lot of capacity building required to be done. We have a allocation in the by the International Seabed Authority in Southern Indian Ocean, but I think it's been a while where we have not been able to really aggressively explore and exploit the block that has been allocated to us. So there is definitely a requirement to, one very interesting thing is that we have had so many big mega projects announced in this country, whether it is Sagarmala, inland water transport, water resource management, but there is not a single academic curriculum in any academia where acoustics is being taught. Neither in postgraduate, anywhere. IIT Delhi, where I qualified, it is a little more broader thing, but acoustics is not being taught. So we have been working with AICT, and we are very happy to announce that AICT has already approved this, and now we are talking to multiple academic institutions because there are so many stakeholders who will require this even for their own capacity building. And there is going to be huge job opportunities because there is so much more investments coming from the government alone. And of course, there will be opportunities for the private sector to also come in. Fishing is another big area. Since 1996, the fish stock is on the decline. But the bycatch in most, not just in India or the Indian Ocean region, most part of the world, it is in the unorganized sector. The bycatch is almost of the order of 80%. So there is a huge amount of regulation that is required in the fishing industry itself. And India is also fighting multiple issues in the WTO also with regards to fishing. So then we have these offshore assets, their underwater security, their impact on the environment, a whole lot of issues get involved, and we need to look at this. Deep sea mining, we have discussed. So again, in terms of blue economy, there are huge opportunities, and we need to, I mean, even in terms of when we talk about startup opportunity, there's huge opportunity there. Disaster management, acoustic noise is a very, very important area. With so much maritime activity, noise is increasing, and these kind of strandings have become very common. Disaster management is an issue. We are happy to announce that the DG Shipping has forwarded our paper to the IMO as India's paper for monitoring acoustic habitat degradation in the Indian Ocean region. And the same thing can be actually taken forward in multiple. Pure science and technology, we are, even if we just talk about the our EZ, it is about 20.4 lakh square kilometer of area. So we need to deploy a huge amount of technology now with smart sensors and AI and ML. I think a lot more can be done, but we have to involve more and more people. Huge capacity building is required. So this is the framework that we have proposed. And what I would like to bring to your notice is, if you look at the cube, all the four sides represent the various stakeholders that we talked about. But the core will remain the acoustic capacity building. So all the stakeholders need to pool in resources, come together, and work on the acoustic capacity building. I mean, there are multiple ways we can do it. I'll not go into the details. The second aspect is, if you look at the vertical construct, our own understanding of our waters or data of our own waters is very, very minimal. So we need to do a lot of sensing. I gave you the example of underwater search and recovery, but there are many other aspects. If you want to bring good regulations, we need to do a lot of sensing, application specific analysis, and then the policy should be brought in. And if we talk about the young India, the demographic advantage that we have, I think many of them can very easily or in a more structured way get involved. It's a multidisciplinary thing, whether it is science and technology students or liberal arts students or law students, any discipline, they can participate. We have been conducting a lot of training programs, internship programs. A lot of students join us and they benefit out of this, and they contribute a lot. I mean, more than they benefiting, we benefit in terms of having these young people with us and contributing to our ideas. Just to take that forward, a simple example is the underwater radiated noise management. For the Navy, it is important in terms of acoustic stealth. Habitat degradation is another area. Then ship builders and ship designers need to look at policy, technology, human resource. Every aspect needs to be. I'll not go into the details of this. Another one is sediment classification, whether it is for water resource management. Most of our dams are silted. How do we take care of that? Inland water transport. How do we keep our rivers navigable? How do we keep our national waterways navigable? It's a huge challenge in terms of deploying platforms in the water bodies, whether it is for security requirement or for any other purpose. Again, sediment classification becomes important. So same kind of things can be looked at. The broader user academia industry partnership, you can see on the sides the various stakeholders. But if you look at the funnel, on one end, it is very much aligned with various government schemes, whether it is Make in India, Skill India, Startup India, Digital India. And the other side, you see the core competence that will be required. And the output of the funnel would be effective policy, innovative technology, and skilled human resource. So we are trying to work on various aspects, and we would like many partners to come forward and help us take this forward at the national and the regional level. MRC has been doing multiple projects. I'll not go too much into details. I'll quickly run through this, and some part of it is already there. This is a project we did on using the automated identification system data, the shipping traffic and the shipping data. We passed it through various algorithms and generated an underwater noise map to allow environmental monitoring. And also this can be used for any underwater deployment, whether it is a submarine deployment or any system deployment, even for commercial purposes. I mean, we all know any sonar, the signal to noise ratio is important. So if you have a good understanding of the noise, it is, and these are dynamic maps that we have generated every 5 minutes. We can give you an update. So and you can very well look at this, and even now the International Maritime Organization is also coming with noise regulations. So it will help in managing that. So governance becomes a very, very important deliverable of this. So a lot of policy decisions can be taken. This one is a global innovation challenge. We were the only entry from Asia. We were invited to France, and it was a very good interaction. So European Union also showed a lot of interest in this work. Going forward, we are looking at 3D mapping, and so I mean complete transparency, or the digital ocean, as we say, in the three-dimensional component. Quickly, I would like to touch upon this one example I give very regularly. Strategic submarine deployment. We had this incident when we had deployed a submarine, and the entire sonar screen got blanked out. And this was because the snapping shrimps had overwhelmed the sonars. So these snapping shrimps are very small creatures. You can see that is 1.5 centimeter is the length of that line. But they generate sound of the order of 200 dB, reference 1 micropascal. This is even more than the biggest mammal, which is blue whale, which generates about 196 dB. So it is very important for us to appreciate that such kind of mapping is very, very important, and we need to kind of take it forward. So we have been working on this, and what has happened is that so we did a complete habitat mapping of snapping shrimps, and also the there is I'll have to yeah, I think I'll skip the presentation for now. So we have developed this soundscape map, and this is, but what we realized is that this same map can be used for even aquaculture also, and for enhancing the livelihood of coastal communities. So we have been working on multiple such projects. I mean, the list is long. We'll not get into that. The second part is we run what is called a UDA Summer School. For the last 4 years, in fact, 5 years now, we have been doing that. We get students from all over the country. They spend 4 weeks in Bombay, supported by Mumbai University, and 2 weeks in Goa, supported by Goa University and NIO. And we have had very senior people like the panelists you saw here, including Admiral Arun Prakash, the naval chief, who come and interact with these participants. And we have had participants all the way from the Northeast, also from Assam. And they spend 6 weeks with us. Everybody does an individual project, and they go back. They get to interact with the industry also. We've had very senior people from the industry, and it's so heartening to see senior people spending. And I always request the resource persons to come with a little longer time, so that they can interact with the students and also kind of answer their questions. So it's been a very, very good experience. The first UDA Summer School, we had Mr. Manohar Parikar attending the valedictory function, and we've had very senior people coming in and interacting with them. So it's been very, very satisfying. We've had 4 PhD students who have finished their PhD on specific subjects. We've had more than 200 students from BITS Pilani and IIT Delhi also working with us on multiple projects, and basically taking forward and building the body of work that we are working. We have a small in-house team, but it's been very satisfying to interact with a whole lot of young students. And so the UDA framework can be extremely useful for various kind of applications. So I'll stop here, and I'll request Admiral Dhawan, PVSM, AVSM, YSM, Chairman, Society for Aerospace, Maritime and Defense Studies, and former Chief of the Naval Staff, and also Chairman, National Maritime Foundation, to kindly make his presentations. Admiral sir, kindly unmute yourself, sir. Admiral sir, you'll have to unmute yourself, sir. Admiral sir, we are not able to hear you. Kindly unmute yourself, sir. You are muted, sir. Yes, sir. You can go ahead now, sir. You are unmuted now, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Arnab. It is indeed a pleasure to be part of your webinar. Honorable Mr. Suresh Prabhu, the former minister and currently the Sherpa to G20 and G7, Commander Arnab Das, eminent panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a distinct honor for me to be present here today to share my thoughts with all of you on the challenges and opportunities in the Indo-Pacific region. The term Indo-Pacific has moved decisively from its origins in biogeography to the realities of geopolitics. And today, the Indo-Pacific, which is essentially a confluence of two oceans, has emerged as the world's strategic and economic center of gravity in the maritime domain. India's primary area of interest in the maritime domain is the Indian Ocean region, and the secondary area of interest extends across the waters of the Indo-Pacific. India's views on the Indo-Pacific have been spelled out by the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, when he described the bounds as extending from the shores of Africa to those of the Americas. And the Honorable Prime Minister also added that India's engagement in the Indo-Pacific would be inclusive. I will now highlight some of the challenges and opportunities in the Indo-Pacific and also outline some of the specific recommendations to chart the way ahead for a safe, secure, stable, and sustainable Indo-Pacific. The instabilities and turbulence on land in some parts of the Indo-Pacific, along with issues such as sovereignty, territorial integrity, freedom of navigation, and control of resources, have a potential to spill over into the maritime domain. And the situation can best be described as fragile. Consequently, over 120 warships from nearly 20 navies are always present in the Indian Ocean to safeguard their maritime interests. In addition, naval assets are regularly deployed in the South China Sea to ensure freedom of navigation. India has advocated adherence to international law, and it is recommended that India, along with the countries of the region, work together to evolve a common rules-based international order to ensure freedom of navigation, as well as equal access and rights under the international law to the global commons. The waters of the Indo-Pacific have emerged as global economic highways, and the maritime interests of the countries of the region are intrinsically linked to unfettered flow of oil and trade across the region. About 120,000 ships transit the Indian Ocean every year, carrying 66% of the world's oil, 50% of the world's container traffic, and 33% of the world's cargo traffic. And about 1 billion tons of oil transits the ocean every year. And these oil arteries and trade routes lead further east to the ASEAN and countries such as Japan, South Korea, and China. Another unique feature of the Indian Ocean is that 80% of the oil and trade that emanates in the Indian Ocean is extra-regional in nature. This implies that if there is any impediment to the free flow of oil or trade, it would have a detrimental impact, not just on the economies of the region, but the global economy as well. Safety, security, and stability is therefore of paramount importance on the waters of the Indo-Pacific, and it is recommended that networking between navies and maritime partnerships between the countries of the region need to be strengthened on priority in the coming years. In order to examine the options and to promote maritime cooperation between the countries of the Indo-Pacific, we would have to look at the connectivity options as well as the existing structures. As far as the connectivity options are concerned, in addition to the Belt and Road Initiative, which was mentioned by Captain Bansal, we have a bouquet of options. We have the International North-South Transport Corridor. We have the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, Project MOSM, which is an initiative taken by India for connectivity between people and cultures. We have the strategy for free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. And we have the concept of SAGAR, which is the acronym which is for security and growth for all in the region, and is the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi. As far as the existing structures are concerned, we find them at three levels in the Indian Ocean. At the conceptual level, we have the concept of SAGAR. At the political level, we have the Indian Ocean Rim Association, which was established in 1997. And around 2012, maritime safety and security was added to the agenda of the IORA for promoting cooperation among the countries of the region. At the execution level of the navies, we have the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, which is a unique initiative taken by the Indian Navy in 2008. And today it provides a template for promoting maritime security cooperation between navies of the region. Similarly, in the Indo-Pacific at the conceptual level, we could consider the strategy for free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. At the political level, we have the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or the Quad construct. And at the execution level of the navies, we need to formalize the cooperation arrangement between the navies of the Quad countries. It is recommended that we have greater interaction between the existing structures, the navies and the maritime forces, so as to pursue the connectivity options optimally, as well as to provide synergy for maritime cooperation across the Indo-Pacific. In order to fully implement the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi's vision of SAGAR, or security and growth for all in the region, we need to draw up a comprehensive maritime cooperation roadmap with other countries in the region, and this must be with a whole of government approach. The aim would be to look at further avenues of maritime cooperation, at the same time to provide safety and security, and also to shape a favorable maritime environment across the Indo-Pacific. The waters of the Indo-Pacific are global economic highways, but the seas are no longer a benign medium, and globalization has resulted in vulnerability of the oceans. The threats and challenges on the waters of the Indo-Pacific are as wide and varied as they come, and these range from piracy to maritime terrorism, arms trafficking, drug smuggling, human trafficking, and poaching or IUU fishing. To tackle and take on these threats and challenges, the maritime forces and the navies need to have an effective information sharing arrangement to enhance the maritime domain awareness right across the Indo-Pacific. India has leveraged technology, and we launched the naval communications satellite Rukmini in 2013. In addition, we set up an extensive NC3I network by linking up the automatic identification system chain, the coastal radar station, and 51 stations of the Navy and the Coast Guard were integrated into the Information Management and Analysis Center, IMAC, which was set up by the Indian Navy in 2014. In addition, the Indian Navy has set up the Information Fusion Center in 2018. The navies, as well as the maritime forces, need to therefore cooperate and exchange information, particularly the white shipping information, so as to enhance the maritime domain awareness across the Indo-Pacific region. We also need to extend the maritime domain awareness in the underwater dimension, and we need to look at the feasibility of cooperation between the navies, particularly the navies of the Quad countries, to enhance the underwater domain awareness. And we could look at one of the feasibilities of linking into the fishhook sound surveillance or the SOSUS network. This would be particularly applicable around the or in the vicinity of the island chains and at the choke points to the Indian Ocean. Another area where the navies and their hydrographic assets could interact and cooperate for the underwater mapping is that of marine spatial planning. There is a need for effective mapping of our coastal areas as well as the exclusive economic zone, so as to prevent development of what we may call offshore ocean slums. And we need to effectively map and carry out the underwater mapping of all these areas, including the deep seabed mining areas, of which India has been allocated a sizable portion in the central Indian Ocean. And the aim would be that we can optimally exploit these by cooperation with other countries for harnessing the blue economy. The waters of the Indo-Pacific are also an area where the challenge includes that the indiscriminate pollution of the oceans has had a detrimental impact of climate change on the oceans. Consequently, a large percentage of extreme climate conditions turn into natural disasters. And this is where the navies and maritime forces in the region need to cooperate so as to provide humanitarian assistance and disaster relief to the countries in the aftermath of tsunamis as well as the cyclones. The United Nations document Transforming Our World 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goal SDG 14 provide a template for conservation of oceans, seas, and resources. It is recommended that India once again takes the lead along with other countries of the region to draw up a perspective plan to counter the ill effects of climate change, to look at sustainable development of the oceans, and also have a cooperation mechanism with other countries of the region to harness the blue economy. One of the areas where pollution has impacted is a sort of impact on the natural marine habitat. And studies have indicated that 80% of all pollutants in the oceans emanate from land. And if the current rate of pollution continues, in a few decades from now, we will have more plastic in the ocean than fish. The Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, has launched a dynamic initiative of Swachh Bharat or Clean India. We need to extend this initiative to Swachh Sagar or Clean Oceans. India definitely needs to take the lead along with other countries in the region to draw up an action plan for clean and healthy oceans for the future generations. The seas around us are gaining newfound importance as each day goes by, and I have no doubt that the current century is the century of the seas. The countries of the Indo-Pacific region are essentially maritime in nature, with a natural outflow towards the seas. They have vast maritime interests, and the responsibility of protecting these interests falls squarely on the shoulders of men in white uniform, because it is the responsibility of the navies and the coast guards to ensure that these maritime interests, which have a vital relationship with the region's economic growth, are allowed to develop unhindered at all times. Maritime security is an enabler of the blue economy. However, no single navy in the world is robust enough to provide safety and security to the entire global commons. The maritime nations, the navies, and maritime forces will therefore have to work together to ensure and provide for a safe, secure, stable, and sustainable Indo-Pacific region in the future. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. You continue to inspire. Sir was my captain 24 years back. And thank you very much, sir. Now I would welcome Dr. Pramod Chaudhary, sir. He is the founder, chairman of Raj Industries, former president of MCCI. And sir has been awarded the prestigious George Washington Carver Award 2020. And he's the first Indian to receive this global honor. So thank you so much for joining us, and it's your turn, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Sri Suresh Prabhuji, Admiral Dhawan, and Arnav, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, it's a very great coincidence that today is a International Biodiversity Day. And Admiral Dhawan has given me a very major lead, which is covered by my talk, and that is about underwater pollution and climate change effect. And actually, I'm going to talk about those areas. In Arnav's framework of underwater development, there are 4 arms he has shown, 3 layers and 4 arms. And one of the arms is referring to underwater pollution and marine environment. So, as I said that, welcome on this International Day for Biological Diversity. And what his theme is that we are a part of the solution for the nature. And that's how I'm going to connect bioeconomy with maritime. I hope you will find great relevance since Dr. Admiral Dhawan has given me a very interesting entry point. I'm going to talk a few things about Praj or endorsed into bioeconomy in maritime. There are 3 areas I'm referring. You see, he mentioned about plastic. It's being covered as my subject also. In case of climate change, we are talking about biofuels in marine. And last but not the least is the ballastic water treatment. These are the 3 major subjects and what kind of strategic interventions are required to improve the situation in time to come. Thank you. Arnav mentioned about this award which I got last year. This is from USA. And we consider George Washington Carver as a founder of industrial biotechnology, which is covering all these aspects in terms of converting plant-based material into useful products and creating less carbon footprints. And that's the whole concept is all about. This is my company at a glance. Now we are about 38 years old, and we are operating more than or 75 countries across the globe. These are our 5 business verticals and 1 R&D. We strongly believe in innovation and R&D, where we are doing. I'm talking about bioenergy as a major vertical. We are also into high purity for pharma sector, brewery, process equipment, and effluent working, effluent recycle, and ZLD. And the R&D is very much focused on renewable chemicals and materials. So almost 4 decades of our existence, we have created some important leadership in this space. Our expertise goes from, as I said, complete value chain from research and development, technology, designs, equipment manufacture, up to life cycle management. So all these things for various plants we consider and work around this part. So this is a seamless value chain from concept to realization up to life cycle. And what we say that it is a R&D to D&D. Unless these things are deployed with the help of proper designs to get the results of our research work. These are the various blocks in the areas of competencies which we are deploying. This just shows the map, the various continents where we have been working for last 40 years and various list of marquee customers in our list of references. So what is bioeconomy is all about? Bioeconomy, as mentioned here, is a knowledge, know-how-based production and use of biological resources which provide products at a low carbon and they help achieve sustainability. Admiral Dhawan mentioned exactly the sustainability or the various SDGs laid down by this UNFCCC framework. They help you achieve the SDGs. And that's what is the bioeconomy is all about. And we have got two major pillars. One is the biomobility, which is a variety of biofuels, and the other one is bioprism, which is for renewable chemicals and materials. What is important is that having a feedstock expertise, we have good reference and analysis of variety of feedstocks, the way they are appearing all over the globe. And those feedstocks can be gainfully converted with the help of various specializations of bioprocess technology or molecular biology, microbiology, and they can be converted into a product, sometimes with the help of chemical sciences and keeping in view of lower carbon footprints or higher energy gains. So these are the two platforms I mentioned, biomobility and bioprism. And while doing this, the environment, the economy, and social. So these are the three major principles of balancing the sustainability. We take care of all these three aspects. For example, economy, it is helpful for improving the farmer's income. Socially, it creates the cleaner environment, also create job opportunity. So both these things are kept in the back of the mind while offering various solutions. So this is a biomobility platform. If you can see these 8 bubbles, one is this ethanol, which is the main thing goes on the ground surface. We also got sustainable aviation fuel, which we recently developed, which is under testing. The Air Force, the Indian Air Force has approved the specifications and fit for use. They given a certificate to that effect. Biohydrogen is the upcoming thing. And meanwhile, we have developed the marine biofuels as one of the important parameters, which is the subject of today's interest. So we have a surface, air, and water fuels for the variety of transportation purpose. They also are covering liquid and gaseous. The CBG is compressed biogas, which is made out of the agri residue, and it can be definitely used in place of CNG. Yeah. So coming to the India's maritime challenges, what are the things? The trade, of course, is a very important, and that's where the trade volume and the value is very high. It is contributing to the economy, and ports capacity is very high. It is growing with a CAGR of 6% transportation. Vessels are mostly internal combustion engine driven, and mostly they're using fossil fuel. The bunker fuel is a common thing. I think the Indian the maritime is spending or consuming about 955 tons, million tons. And Fosca also is going to go at 6%. The growth is definitely creating new challenges in the economy for GHG emissions, carbon dioxide, NOx, SOx, particulate matters, and they are definitely affecting not only the environment, also the marine life. EU is the first bloc of countries enforcing stringent regulation to curb the sulfur emissions. And that is really becoming a very important requirement for the industry. The IMO, International Marine Organization, that has established the goals on reducing shipping-related GHG emission by 50% by 2050. We are talking in 2002. Hardly use of biofuels is happening, but slowly now it is increasing. A group of many naval or marine merchant organizations, merchant navy organizations are coming together, like MRC and all that, and they formed the group how to look at this challenge. So biomarine fuels will help curb emission, GHG emission, and also achieve nationally determined contribution. What we look is that for India, it will also result in saving forex and create energy security, because for 80% of the oil is imported, and this is a homegrown fuels which can not only support the farming community but also makes the country more self-sufficient. So we feel that marine biofuels have a potential as a growth enabler for India. We are in our R&D, we already work on this, and we already got some samples made. It's starting with the biomass, agri-biomass. We extract the lignin from that, and then that is converted with the help of some chemical process, and we get a marine oil. They help achieve higher octane and cetane requirement, low sulfur and no sludge content, low viscosity, needs low energy for preheating. Blend compatibility is very important, and stability with residual and distillate fuels. Minimize the need for onboard H2S, sulfide purification, not leverages existing fuel dispensing infrastructure. So marine biofuels, we feel, is a huge activity which can have, we have branded it rightly, is the eco-marine, is our trademark. Second subject was about plastic. Many of you may remember from my generation, in 1967, Hollywood blockbuster movie Graduate, which was starring Dustin Hoffman. And his professor tells him that, remember one word, plastic. It has a great future. This was in 1967, so almost more than 50 years have passed. Durability of one of plastic assets is now, it has become a curse. Its robustness doesn't allow it to deteriorate or doesn't get disposed of so easily. That is really causing a major challenge for the environment. So what are we looking at this? Of course, these are the things of plastic. What's happening that the plastic consumption, which is mainly on the land, is on in the US side and the India side, you can see, but it is definitely affecting the various piles of plastic. It is affecting the marine wealth. That's the big whale which is having a lot of plastic in its stomach. So you can see that the way it is causing menace for the marine life. Now, Admiral Dhawan said 80% of the marine plastic is originates from the land. So it comes from the land and gets mixed up with the marine underwater domain. 9 million tons of plastic enter ocean every year. Roughly kills 1 million seabirds. So, I mean, these are very mind-boggling numbers which we normally don't realize it. Whales and dolphins are deeply impacted. The way they are getting impacted by the acoustics, the lunar troubles, they are also getting affected by this. And they also damage the corals. So these are the few. Plastic is endangering existence of marine life is more than a reality. So plastic debris comes in various things, small microplastics, large, mega or meso, and these are a variety of things which are having. Plastic recycling is radically improved over time, but reuse and recycle is also still limited. Fundamental of redesign and innovation is the key. And how do you go into the plastic packaging or plastic as a raw material? How you handle it is the major solution. And what we do is our bioprism renewable chemical portfolio is looks at the bioplastics. Bioplastics and related materials, polymers, they are made from the renewable source, and they can be also in the form of degradable plastics, so that they either get composted on the land and doesn't go into the marine this thing, or they can be degrading on its own over a period of time. So biotechnology is giving an opportunity to work on these biopolymers, bioplastics, and many of these from various feedstocks which are having sugary or carbohydrates feedstocks, cellulosic feedstocks, and with the help of green process, they can be produced and given like polylactic acid, PHA is a polyhydroxy, biopet is now becoming very common. So these are the areas where we can create variety of renewable plastics. Third subject was of ballastic water management. You know, in the stomach belly of the ship, they fill up the ballastic water, and that water has to be discharged. And what you fill up in Mumbai has to be perhaps discharged in the Northern Sea or somewhere like that, and it can carry along with a lot of contamination, pollution, viruses, bacteria, and more stricter rules are coming from various countries that they won't allow this to be discharged in that manner unless it is properly treated. And the treatment for a huge quantity of ballast water is definitely a big challenge. What we are looked at it is of course known this thing is a technology which will have, which is called as a cavitation technology, hydrodynamic cavitation, which can convert or which can kill the bacteria, and it creates little bit temperature. So it's an eco-friendly technology without any external sources except for a little bit of pumping, and the seawater can be cured for contamination, bacteria, and other things. So it can reach that required specification and then can be discharged without any problem. So these are the three areas in which we are working. We feel these are important areas and these are within our reach, where we can definitely contribute for the underwater domain and also improve the marine environment. So marine biofuels and bioplastic, we want to strengthen the collaboration. We're already working with some private marine companies, shipping companies, and we are trying to develop models to work around this. We hope there will be very soon some international standards and regulatory framework will be in position which can improve the utilization for marine biofuels and recycle of the bioplastics. So with this presentation, I thank Arnav and Praful for giving me this opportunity to share these various thoughts, ideas, and they can be useful for improving the domain, underwater domain. I'm happy Sri Prabhuji is here, and he is one of the ardent supporter of green fuels. In fact, he is also heading or running a number of activities in that area. So thank you. I hope we could get little glimpse of what I was trying to explain. And thank you once again. Good luck for this conference webinar. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very very comprehensive presentation with a lot of data, sir, and definitely it brings a different dimension to what we were discussing. Suresh Prabhu sir has joined. Thank you so much, sir. It's been extremely encouraging for you having agreed to join us. And Prabhu sir has, I mean, I don't think he needs any introduction. He has handled many portfolios as a union minister, very important portfolios. But what is of interest to us is that sir has been extremely passionate about matters maritime. As Commander Arun Saigal sir tells me that for over so many years and a couple of decades, sir has been looking at multiple aspects of the maritime domain and how he can encourage and support this. And sir, your letter to MRC has been extremely encouraging for us, and we'll continue to seek your guidance and support. Sir is now of cabinet rank and looking at, is the Sherpa to the G20 and G7. Sir, we'll request you to kindly give your chief guest remarks. Sir.
So, good afternoon, friends. And I'm very happy to see some very distinguished people participate in these programs. All of them are very good friends. So let me first acknowledge the presence of Admiral R.K. Dhawan, who was head of Navy and my very dear friend. In fact, even as I can see him behind him, there is a standing. He has also given me a replica of that, so I'm always keep it to remember him. So I'm very happy to see him again, and my best wishes to him. He did an admirable job as an admiral. So I think admirable admiral is here. So I really very happy to see him. Also, I'm happy to see Dr. Pramod Chaudhary, who is another very distinguished industrialist, who takes interest into innovation and he had developed business not with government support, but because of his innate business of making the world better. So his solutions for business are going to make world better, like he was explaining just now, that how oceans are a problem because of the prevalent practices. How could we change it with good business practices? That's what we need. We need economy, but we also need economy in a way that will make world better. And that's what he has been doing for a long time. I'm also happy to see my dear friend Captain Alok Bansal. He and me are working together for a long, long time on many strategic issues, many socio-economic issues, and we also work as colleagues on India Foundation. So we are trying to lay together a foundation for better India. I would call it India Foundation stands for that. So I think I'm very happy that he's also here. I'm very happy that my other friend Sandeep Unithan, who is very distinguished journalist, and he has done a great job on strategic issues. Always what he writes is something which you like to read. But there's not always that what people write you want to read. But sometimes you're forced to read, and sometimes you can avoid to read. But he's something which he writes, always a pleasure to read. I'm very happy that he's also here. Sri Praful Talera, who is here, who's an advisor to economy. And of course, the mover and the real motivator for this program is Dr. Arnab Das. And I'm very happy that such distinguished people, along with some others, are participating in this program on a very important issue. I think if you really look at it, despite the fact that we have got 7,600 kilometers long coastline, I don't think we have paid enough attention to the oceans. We always talk about them on a World Ocean Day or some other day like that. But in our strategic thinking or mainstream policy making, I don't think oceans have occupied a kind of place that it should have. And in fact, if you really look at it from any perspective, whether it is security perspective, whether it is economic development, whether it is for pleasure, whether it is for social good, oceans play such an important role. But not, unfortunately, it has assumed such a great importance. And therefore, I really welcome Dr. Das's new initiative of bringing together different stakeholders into this roundtable, and not just for this event, but he has been working in an institutionalized manner to work on these strategic issues in a very comprehensive and holistic way, and to deal with them through a process by which we can actually take advantage of this. So I'm very happy that we are doing this, and I'm just give me 1 minute. My dog is with me. So as I was saying, this is such an important initiative which needs not just acclamation, but full support. And therefore, I'm sure with such distinguished people who are present here, we'll be able to work on it together to make oceans as a priority area for our national revival, I would call it. And therefore, I really welcome this initiative. On this particular program, we are trying to work on underwater domain awareness. If you look at it, interestingly, early last year, January, there was a World Economic Forum in Davos. That was, in fact, probably the last importance of any significance that happened on global scale before the lockdown started globally. And in that event, the World Economic Forum had kept a program on outer space. And then Secretary Commerce, Wilbur Ross from the United States, and I were on the panel. It was only two of us, a very splendid discussion on this. So I had mentioned at that time that we could not manage the planet properly. The land-based management is so poor that we are facing all kinds of problems. So when we are talking about doing outer space, I hope we do not go the same way. We do not create another hassle in the outer space as well. So let us take a proper scientific view, but at the same time, comprehensive view, holistic view. How do you manage the outer space? The same way when we are talking about managing the oceans and particularly the underwater domain, I think it is very important, very imperative that we have proper thinking about it and work in a way that will ensure So we must, talking about underwater domain awareness, I think this is a time that not much has been exploited so far. And luckily so. So when you are not messed up the whole thing, it's a time to plan it properly and do not repeat the same mistakes that has been done to deal with terrestrial biodiversity and other issues. Incidentally, and I'll come to it later because that's my passion, today incidentally is Biodiversity Day. And therefore, I don't know whether you have kept it with purpose or it's an accident, but whatever way, it is very important that we discuss that part also a little later. But very importantly, underwater domain awareness is extremely important because what we see on the surface, there is probably several times over. There is lying beneath the surface, and what is there underwater is not fully exploited, not fully understood, not fully comprehended, but this is hugely valuable, very precious. At the same time, if you don't handle it properly, could create such challenges that we'll not be able to deal with them afterwards. As you know, oceans are like the last resort. When you know a bank, the economy is in peril, there is a central bank which is the banker of last resort. You can go there and can then, if the central bank raises the hand, then nothing is left of any country. So they are the lenders of last resort. They give money and save the economy of any country in the world. But if central bank of the country raises the hand, it's gone. Today, despite all the environmental challenges, human beings, or for that matter, the entire biodiversity, or for that matter, entire biological life, is surviving thanks to oceans. Oceans are carbon sinks, they are provider of oxygen, many others. But as it happens in our day-to-day life, a child can commit any mistake, any grave error. Father will get angry, will throw him out of the house. Mother will always keep protecting him because it's my child. I want to protect him. When mother gives up, then nobody can save the child. If the oceans give up tomorrow, you can imagine they are all gone. They are already gone. Half part of our body is already in the grave. But whatever is remain will also be gone if oceans are not managed properly. So when we talk about underwater domain awareness, I think that should be the first understanding that we must create in the minds of people. That while there are such precious resources, economic value is lying there, but if you do not use it in a proper manner, it can create even unintended consequential challenges that will not be able to deal with at all. Because the oceans would have finally given up, like the central bank or the mother of the country, mother of the family, or central bank of the country. So it is very important that we must deal with it properly. But while it is extremely important that we must deal with it, because that's an opportunity available to us, still not used properly. Like outer space, it's underwater, which is going to be the new frontiers of growth in the world. Many countries of the world are already going there. In fact, the CNN broke the story yesterday that they just went and found out how the Russians are trying to put strategic assets on Antarctica and other places. So actually very important that we must use it like other countries are doing it, but must have a proper understanding about what we are exploiting should not be done in a way that will destroy everybody at the same time. So that is very important that we must keep this in mind. It is at the same time, this initiative of Dr. Das and his colleagues are happening at a time when Prime Minister has announced a very interesting initiative, Sagar, which will deal with many aspects. One important aspect is security. Other important aspect is growth. And when we are dealing with security and growth, we must keep in mind that a proper analysis about different aspects of it are necessary. And who will do that? I have been in the government for a long time. In fact, I completed 25 years being in the parliament. And I have handled 10 different cabinet positions over a long period of time. 6 under Vajpayee, 4 under Modi ji. And I come to this conclusion that knowledge, wisdom, expertise is not a sole domain of the government. Much of it lies outside the government. So if you don't access it from outside, the government will be the biggest loser. In fact, US, which is the biggest economy of the world, but also the biggest scientific power of the world, the biggest military of the world, but they are also benefiting from the largest number of think tanks in the US. The US could never have been enriched with their policy making without the advice of those think tanks. So the think tanks are very important. So when we talk about Sagar, when we talk about security growth and various aspects of it, we need a foundation like what Dr. Das is already started working on to look at it from different angles. Not just make off-the-cuff policy, but in-depth analysis from all possible angles. Cool, quiet discussion, thinking. And that is what you are trying to do. So I'm very happy that Dr. Das has created this foundation, which, as I said, for India Foundation, I'm sure this foundation will lay the foundation for tomorrow's growth of the oceans. The foundation is very important, more than the superstructure. So I think I'm sure this will really help us to develop on that basis. Today, this Prime Minister's vision can be put into reality, and we will look at it from all important aspects of it. Therefore, we'll have to get multidisciplinary expertise. We'll have to have people who know oceans, people who know marine biodiversity, people who know security, who know how the maritime trade happens. In fact, if India has to grow into economy size. And as Commerce and Industry Minister, I had prepared a roadmap how $5 trillion will happen and $10 trillion will happen over a period of time. And it is definitely going to be a little bit slowed because of the slowdown generally in the world economy. But we'll reach there, maybe a little later, but we'll definitely be there. But when we'll reach there, we can reach there only on the back of global trade. And the global trade cannot happen without oceans. In fact, almost 80% of the global trade happens through oceans. And it's incidentally different matter. Dr. Das, I don't know whether you're dealing with that. 20% of the seafarers are Indian origin. So just imagine the global trade which is dependent on oceans, and ocean global trade is dependent on seafarers, and 20% of them are from India. So just imagine the disproportionately higher share that we have to deal with the global trade issue. So we don't have the big shipping lines in India, but the shipping assets are managed by Indians. So that, I think, is a dimension I'm sure you'll keep in mind when we deal with that. But I will talk about SAGAR as an important initiative which can be put into reality with support of this foundation that you are trying to create. And therefore, I welcome this idea. In global trade, there are two important oceans. There is Indian Ocean, and South China Sea. In Indian Ocean, we have taken a lot of initiatives. South China Sea is always fraught with challenges. There are countries or a country claiming exclusive sovereignty over it, defying the international law, questioning the maritime rights of some other countries. That's a different matter, but already is happening. These are the two important trade routes, but also flashpoints. If not managed properly, it could pose security problems and could have political ramification to it. Already having political ramification in case of South China Sea. There are certain islands which are located on the sea are being claimed by more than one country. And there are already flashpoints which are already reached. Indian Ocean and South China Sea, therefore, are very important. And I'm sure Dr. Das would be looking at all the issues in an important way, not just from the military perspective, but also from socio-economic and political perspective. That is very important. Because as I was saying earlier, if we do not deal with it in a comprehensive way, in a holistic way, we'll never be able to get to the real solutions that are necessary. What is now important is to also create a kind of maritime domain awareness and also governance. And I think I am very happy to note that Admiral Das, again I'm saying admirably, is looking at governance issues also. He governed the army very well as the head of it, but also now using that knowledge and expertise that he acquired during his service to better use by putting governance issues into proper perspective. It's very important that we must keep these maritime domain awareness and governance issues at the forefront. And to do that, the foundation can play a very important role. As we know, that our 7,600 kilometers coastline. In fact, Dr. Das, I would to just mention here that I was a member of parliament 4 terms, Lok Sabha, from Konkan, on the west coast of India. And now I'm a member of parliament for Andhra Pradesh, which is the east coast of India. And when I was a member of parliament from Maharashtra, west coast, for Lok Sabha, I had created a members of parliament forum of coastal states. There are 13 states or union territories which are coastal. And therefore, I prepared a forum and I used to always focus on those issues. Like the type that you are doing. Of course, we didn't have the expertise that you possess or the mandate that you have. But we are trying to work on that. Therefore, I think one day we should try to do the same thing again. Connect the political process through parliament also through this. On one hand, we need government, the MOD and other the Science and Technology Ministry, the Ocean Affairs Department of that, but also related to the political process that can come through members, because they understand the problem. Because the livelihood of people are dependent on oceans. The tourism is dependent on ocean. The sea level rise happening because of climate change and also because of warming. That's why the glaciers are melting and many other problems. So all of that they are faced by the coastal people. So members of parliament can add some value to it. But because of the 7,600 long kilometers coastline, we have exclusive economic zones. And there is so much of resource available beneath it, minerals and others. It's important is. There's also possibility. And in fact, we don't have to go that far. Sometimes when we mention it, people frown upon it. But even way back, we realized the importance of ocean and we talked about Samudra Manthan. And we said, through Samudra Manthan, we find out the nectar which actually helped us. I think today's Samudra Manthan should lead to economic progress in a way that is unimaginable. Provided, again, I'll come to that, we manage it properly. So I've endorsed all this. But unfortunately, if you permit me, I cannot help being a little bit advocate of little issues which are also important to be focused while we deal with these issues. As I was saying, oceans are so important that 90% of habitable space is occupied by that. But most importantly, the oceans provide also food. The fish, the biggest source of protein for most of the people who are fish eaters, come from the oceans. Because of the challenges which are facing without using this undersea resources, we are still facing the problem because major marine ecosystems are completely degraded. And as I was saying earlier, that oceans are carbon sinks. And to what extent? They store carbon 5 times more than the forest. And when we talk about the fires in Amazon and therefore we raise global alarm because of that, just imagine what will happen to oceans. And therefore, while we do all this economic development, exploiting the resources, metals, minerals lying below this, and also probably even resources of energy, hydrates will be lying there. So we have to use all that, but while doing this, you must make sure that we do not damage the environment. And therefore, I suggest first thing, if we have environmental impact assessment studies, when we use some areas like that, I think we must put standards for environmental impact assessment studies for utilizing marine resources. I don't think it is there in place. Not here, probably some countries, but not as much as it's necessary. The foundation should take a lead into preparing the new protocols, and they will ensure that while we use economic resources for betterment of humanity, progress of the country, economic life can improve, but eventually economic life should improve, but quality of life also should improve. And quality of life cannot be improved unless we care for the complete ecology as a whole, not environment ecology. And therefore, I think we will be able to work on that in a proper way. I think it is very important that 50% of oxygen, not just carbon sink, but even oxygen, comes from there. And now because of acidification, we are actually losing even corals and others, which actually store carbon. And therefore, you can imagine the challenges that we'll have over a period of time. I will not try to be the advocate of the devil today, because I'm interested in environment in a significant way, but I don't want to mention it today, all the aspects of that. So I will stop here and I will request you to please focus on these issues. But I must tell you that I think my battery is running out. 1 minute. Let me very unequivocally state that I will be working with you with my full, whatever capabilities I have, with all my friends and colleagues that are available here and others, so that we actually work on this very important mission of development of these resources. But as I said, with cautious optimism, we should work on it. We should never use our knowledge, our technology for damaging it, but to make it better. And to do that, I think it is always better to err on the right side, that we should not make those mistakes. What we have done on the ground, we should try to change it. Therefore, I really wish to thank you, and I will stop here and we'll be working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It is extremely encouraging and a very a good perspective that you gave us, and we have noted down all the points given by you, sir, and we will definitely work under your guidance to take it forward. So thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate you giving us the right guidance and giving us the right direction. I must also put on record, sir, in the audience, we have some very senior people, including Air Chief Marshal Naik, sir, also, and so many senior admirals from the Navy, from the Merchant Navy, and various other domains of underwater. And we are very, very happy to have you as our chief guest with so many distinguished people with us. Thank you so much, sir. Now, we have a small section on intervention by dignitaries. And you must have seen we have a very diverse panel to look at multiple aspects. But even among the interventions also, we have four very eminent people, starting with Shri Chenraji. He runs one of the very big private academic institutions, because academia will be a very, very important component of any capacity building effort that we can think of. And we are very happy that Chenraji could join us. Chenraji, your turn. We'll request you to kindly make your small intervention.
Thank you, sir. Sri Arnab, Dr. Arnab Das, Colonel Dr. Arnab Das. Most respected personality in this session, Sri Suresh Prabhu ji. One of the most finest brain in our country, and the country is proud of this great personality, Sri Suresh Prabhu. I have been following up from last 10-15 years, and I could see the way he thinks and way he has the vision. So it's a great honor to be connected in this assembly with Sri Suresh Prabhu ji. Thank you very much. And I heard you, and every word of yours, 80% of the global trade comes from the ocean, and the 7,600 kilometers of coastline. So entrepreneurship, the development, and the sensitivity of this. I think you have summed up everything. How Sri Admiral ji, who the most admired Admiral ji, Sri R.K. Dhowan ji, Captain Alok Bansal ji, Sri Pramod Chaudhary ji, who was so practical and is a great industrialist. I think they three have covered, and Arnab Das ji, I think your foundation is extraordinary. So blue ocean economy, the century of the future of the century, this century belongs to the blue ocean economy, and its ecological damage or economic activity to be mitigated, and the new areas like demand for protein, R&D, healthcare industry, demand for minerals, alternative energy sources, all we get from the ocean, fresh water shortages, growth in seaborne trade, international regulations, and all the framework what you are looking at. It's a wonderful foundation, sir. As an academic person, as a founder of an organization, Jain University, which is one of the top big universities in the country, with good numbers, I can only understand through Pramod ji, Chaudhary ji, and yourself, and Sri Suresh Prabhu ji, that entrepreneurial activity. I'll be more interested in creating courses on 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, postgraduate research and development in association with under domain awareness, your organization. And I'm sure I have more than 1 lakh of students with me. At least 200 entrepreneurs. A course should be in such a way in a liberal education scenario in national education policy. Our Honorable Prime Minister ji has a great vision. Narendra Modi ji, I have been in personal touch with Sri Honorable Prime Minister also 3 or 4 times when he was in Gujarat, and he came to my global campus also, and he was almost there with us for 3-4 hours when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. So the vision of this concept of your blue ocean environmental and the business ideas, I am sure in academia with entrepreneurship, not just only careers. So I would be happy to associate with you all to create 100 entrepreneurs, ancillary support, or maritime business thinkers I already created 100, incubated 100 small companies. I'm sure ancillary support with Pramodji, Chaudhary and all, we can create an ecosystem of entrepreneurship, which I have created a very powerful ecosystem of entrepreneurship in my university. We want earn while study. So the students should not be only in the academics. So I'll be very happy and I'm very excited to be with the dignitaries of 95 dignitaries are here, all admirals and all business people and thinkers. And especially I'm enlightened with Sri Suresh Prabhuji's thought processes, and especially Admiral R.K. Dovanji and Alokji Bansal and Pramodji Chaudhary have excellently presented, and you Arnabji have brought out a beautiful framework. So thank you very much Arnabji for giving me this opportunity. And we stay connected with you on your vision, mission, and make India a better country. And whatever I can do, I'll be participating from my side with all humility and support to work. Thank you, Sri Sureshji Prabhuji and all the dignitaries. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Narendra Wadhwa sir has joined, and I request Wadhwa sir. He is a financial consultant and a part of SOCHM. I request to make small mention. Wadhwa sir, please.
Thank you, Anarji. Thanks for the opportunity. Sorry, I joined in late, basically.
Kindly unmute yourself. Kindly unmute yourself, sir. Wadhwa sir.
Am I audible? No? Yeah. Thank you, Arnabji. Thanks for the opportunity. I am from the financial industry. I'm basically chartered accountant in capital market. So sorry, I joined in late. But from my point of view, I think I was going through this opportunities in the blue economy, and few examples we have to take, like in Seychelles, they have issued blue bonds. I don't know you have discussed about it or not. There's a great opportunity to issue sovereign bonds from the government, which are called blue bonds. This is in line with the green bonds, which are, is a debt instrument issued by the government and development banks to raise capital from the investor to finance marine and ocean-based projects. It will help the expansion of marine protected areas, improve governance of priority fisheries, and development of blue economy in the country. A small input from me. I think we should explore that opportunity also to fund these projects, the blue economy projects. I think we should explore this thing. Sorry, I joined in late, so I don't know what has been discussed throughout in the session. Thank you, Arnabji, again for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now I would request Sri Rajan NirDhwani, he's CII chair for India at 75, and also he's the vice chairman and managing director of Jetline Group. NirDhwani, sir, your intervention, please.
Thank you, Arnab. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and thank you for inviting me. Really nice to see Honorable Suresh Prabhuji, someone who has been a very key part of the entire India at 75 journey that commenced when India turned 60 in 2007, and really has been a very ambitious vision led by corporate India, but brings multiple stakeholders together to see how we can create a nation that will be in a position of global leadership. And I think one of the things that really stands out when we look at India as a country is the opportunity that we have of becoming a maritime nation. Given the growing recognition of the Indo-Pacific, if you look at the way the Quad is playing out, a lot of geopolitical, kind of developments in recent times, I think clearly give us a need for developing our underwater capabilities. And I don't think anything could have been more timely than this, for an initiative to come up. So I commend, you, Arnab, and the whole team for really bringing about something of great importance to our country. I'll just share a little bit on the India at 75 piece that you mentioned, that I would like to talk about, and you wanted me to just intervene on. So India at 75 really has been a very ambitious vision, as I mentioned earlier. Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji has given a very clear direction to see how it can be celebrated as the Azad Bharat Ka Amrut Mahotsav. 2022 is the defining year where we complete 75 years. The past 15 years have really been a journey where we've seen how India could develop as a country to be built on a foundation of economic strength, technological vitality, moral leadership, and that too within a sandbox, that is so critical for a country like India. So all the innovation that we've really seen happen in India, or we would like to see, in the future, would need to take multiple factors, into effect, especially when we look at, inclusivity or social equity, scalability, sustainability, the ability to provide security, the ability to see how India can actually strengthen capabilities that are very key to it. And innovation is at the core of it, and really the direction for growth and of the future has really been one which is more a journey. So what started out, I think, from an inclusive agenda, from 2007, and really brought about how India can become a source of trained manpower, how can we become strong, as a country and a nation, for the world, has now become one of self-confidence. The Atmanirbhar Bharat theme that has come up really now positions us really well to be able to strengthen our positioning in the world. And I think what this initiative can really add multiple dimensions to what India is and what it can be in the future. And I really look forward to see how we can collaborate to make that happen. I think the three C's of connection, collaboration, co-creation will create that fourth C of culture, which will be a virtual cycle for all of us to be able to see growth not only in the entire area of underwater development, but in all the key areas and sectoral areas in which India will continue to get a leadership in the world. So again, I thank you, Arnab, for inviting me here. I also want to thank Praful, who has given me the pleasure of being here and a part of this, and really pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
We definitely look forward to with you. And I would now, as C. Prabhu said, seafarers have a very, very important role. I'd now like to call upon Captain Vaibhav Rupade, sir, to give perspective. All 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable Minister Suresh Prabhu, thanks for recognizing the seafarers, and coming from that background, it feels very good to have the timely recognition, because even during the entire COVID period till now, let's say around 15-16 months, that industry, along with the borders, the security forces, the medical supplies, just like them, they all work 24/7 as a frontline worker. So thanks a lot for recognizing and mentioning them in this forum. All the dignitaries and distinguished guests, fantastic presentations. Thanks for this chance, Dr. Das. Just quickly summarizing what I had wanted to bring up here is, if UDA could somehow be in future, become some sort of accreditation or approving authority moving forward as a progressional route for examining or assessing the maritime projects on the coast or even in the deep seas, because we have lots of expertise, including auditors and environmental expertise. So in that sense, so that will have some more control over what is happening on the coast as well as into the middle of the sea. Then maritime nations, I wanted to mention, most likely under the Quad, these initiatives are already being undertaken, but we have, because of the threat that is generated by One Belt, One Road or Silk Route initiative taken up by China, I think Singapore's strategic importance, so to say, the geographical importance, the strategic maritime importance is severely under threat, looking 30, 40 years into the future, because Singapore is a bunker hub, Singapore is a logistics hub, Singapore is a maritime nation, a very crucial location. And if majority of the route is used, majority of the transportation used on the Silk Route, I think a lot of traffic would be used. So Singapore is there, Malaysia, Indonesia, Taiwan, Vietnam, Philippines, Japan, Korea, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Thailand, India. There's so much of trade happening, and majority of these countries are on that route where the Silk Route or the One Belt, One Road initiative would jeopardize the economic, the strength. So that is another thing. Most likely under Quad or any other initiative is already being undertaken, but probably moving forward, these could be looked at. The third one is satellite technology combined with underwater assessment and environment assessment. So just like Dr. Chaudhary said from Praj, they are heavily into innovation for bio stuff. So maybe in future, maybe we could probably, coordinate with satellite innovation into studying the underwater environment. And the fourth one is training. We just saw a very unfortunate incident in the west coast of India, where due to this cyclone Taukte, we lost some lives from the dumb barges. So in Singapore, when I was living there, even if I had undergone lots of high-level safety courses, we were made to conduct and we were made to undergo basic level safety courses. So I think the incident that took place on the coast, which is Indian coast, it became a bad news also in international media. I think majority of the lives could have been saved if there were basic training offered to these people who lost their lives, including life jacket management, life buoy management, etc. So in the future, if all these aspects could be incorporated, because we are talking about employment, we're talking about safety, we're talking about security, we're talking about economy, we're talking about innovation. So I thought these 4 points probably could give the best intervention in futuristic planning of this platform. Thanks a lot once again, everyone. And it has been a wonderful evening, well spent, well worth. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you, Dr. Das. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a last quick intervention. Ashok Motwani, sir, you may like to make your intervention. Very short one, sir, please. Sir, kindly unmute yourself. Motwani, sir, please unmute yourself. Yes, I think you can go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Sir, please talk about your book also. I mean, yes, sir, please.
This book is about the Indus Water Treaty, which was signed in 1960. And when we were researching about it, we found very interesting things. And most of it is in the book, but a couple of points are not there in the book. One is that when President Musharraf was brigadier, at that time he has done one dissertation in London Defense School. And that says that we have no issues with India as such. If there is a war, it will be only on water issues. So this, I just wanted to bring it to the elite company of your network. The other thing is that when the treaty was signed, there has been intervention. Mananiya Atalji was member of parliament from Balrampur in 1957. This treaty was ratified on 30th of November in Indian Parliament. At that time, he has very interesting observations, and there was a great support from the library of Lok Sabha TV. And we have managed to incorporate, he spoke in Hindi, we managed to incorporate about 1.5 pages in the book. And book has comments from Suresh Prabhu ji, Nitin Gadkari ji, and forward is from the minister himself. It's been a pleasure. And soon, I suppose, we'll have a separate program for Indus, and I look forward to that. Thank you once again. And it's a pleasure meeting some of the old friends. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. So we would like to reiterate that when we talk about underwater domain awareness, it is not only the seas, it is also the freshwater systems and various other water bodies that we have. Now I would call upon Sandeep Unnithan. He's the executive editor at India Today Group, and he's been very closely following the defense developments, and recently he has come up with a very insightful article on submarine acquisition. Sandeep Unnithan, please, your turn.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Commander Das. It's such an honor to be here with such distinguished people, and it's truly remarkable that you called me for this, and I'm very honored. Now, my topic, I'm going to be talking on the undersea race in Asia, and this is a topic that several speakers have touched upon briefly, Admiral Dhawan and indeed Captain Bansal. The fact is that we in Asia, we are in the midst of an unprecedented undersea arms race of the kind that we haven't seen before. And most of it involves the acquisition of submarines across the Indo-Pacific by countries that have never really, fielded submarines. I'm talking of Vietnam, which recently acquired its first submarines. Thailand and Philippines are looking at similar platforms. Singapore is going in for newer ones. Taiwan is building them. India, of course, we've been a submarine power for more than half a century. Pakistan is building it up in a very major way. And I think a lot of this has to do with the kind of uncertainty that's being created by the rise of China. And many of our distinguished speakers today have, mentioned this fact that how fast the Chinese Navy is growing. And today, as you all know, the Chinese Navy is the world's largest navy in terms of the number of combatants. There are 335 warships that they have. They're even bigger than the United States Navy, which has 296 ships. So in sheer volume, the Chinese Navy today is the biggest in the world. It's not the most capable. That's debatable, of course, because they don't have the kind of carrier battle groups that the United States has. But the fact that they are rising so quickly, they're building up, they're churning out warships at a rate that we haven't seen possibly since the Cold War for sure, has sown uncertainty in all the countries of Asia, especially the smaller countries which have maritime disputes with China, like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia and Malaysia. So everyone's trying to get the submarine, which is, as you all know, is a weapon of asymmetry. It's a weapon of sea denial from the very beginning. It's almost been more than a century now since submarines were fielded. But what explains this huge interest in submarines today in one of the most crucial water bodies of the world, the Indo-Pacific, is the rise of China. And I want to talk about our perspective on submarine acquisitions and where we are coming from, and just to give you a quick run through of how we acquired submarines, and I'll just briefly classify them into decades and give you an overview, a very quick overview of our acquisitions over the since independence, 1947 to the mid 60s. I call it the decades of quest, when we were actually looking forward to acquiring submarines, but somehow we could never get it. And that was one of the reasons that we moved towards the Soviet Union, because they offered us state-of-the-art submarines, 4 of them. We acquired them in the mid 60s, and we indeed continued to build this up through the 70s. And this is the era that I call the golden age of the Indian submarine arm. That's from the 1960s right up to the mid 1990s, when the submarine fleet, the Indian naval submarine fleet, reached 20 units. The ideal, I'm told, is something like 24 units. The Indian Navy needs 24 conventional submarines. That number has changed a bit. So in the mid 90s, you had a Navy that had a force of 20 conventional submarines. And very briefly, for about 3 years in that period, they operated the world's first SSGN that could fire its missiles from underwater, that the INS Chakra that was released from the Soviet Union. This was a fantastic acquisition in terms of capabilities. This is the kind of This had the kind of capabilities that no other navy in the region had. And if you remember the Time magazine cover from the 80s, Superpower India, one of the reasons for that was the fact that the Indian Navy had suddenly come, into its own. After the 71 war, here you were getting, into carrier battle groups and nuclear powered submarines. But then from the 1990s to until a few years back, I call it the era of indecision, because from that high point of 20 submarines, we started gradually coming down in numbers, various reasons. The Navy was trying to make up its mind on the kind of conventional submarines that it needed to acquire for the future. There was a 30-year submarine building plan, a 30-year submarine building plan, which looked at acquiring 24 submarines. And as the years went by, the submarines started getting older. Some of them have been retired. One of them is going to be retired this year. Some have been transferred. The fact is that today we're looking at a fleet of submarines that's aging. And a lot of the fleet are the ones that were acquired in the 90s. And they're all entering their third decades. They're going in for unprecedented second life extensions in Russia. They have to keep the submarines going just to keep the numbers. So, and today you're looking at the Navy operating something like 16 submarines, conventional and nuclear. And as I mentioned, the fleet is aging because new orders are not being placed. Today there are 5 submarines under construction, both conventional and nuclear. These will join the fleet by 2025 and 2026. The problem now is there have not been any new orders for submarines placed for several years now. And the situation right now is that there is no submarine hull that is under construction. No steel is being cut for any new hull. All the hulls that are being assembled currently, whether conventional or nuclear, are those from orders that were placed several years ago. And they've already been, the sections have already been, made. And right now it's only a process of integrating these sections and, converting them into submarines, conventional and nuclear. So the number of submarines that are going to join the fleet this decade, that is from 2021 till 2030, are just going to be about 5 submarines. You have an INS Chakra 2, which was leased from the Russians, and that's going back, will be replaced by another one. And this fleet is not going to change dramatically in this decade. And this is one of the reasons I'm calling this decade that we are in already, 2021 to 2030, as the lost decade. This is a decade that we should ideally have had our perfect submarine strength of 20 conventional submarines and at least 6 nuclear-powered attack submarines. Now, the nuclear-powered attack submarine is a very interesting beast. And if you ask true blue submariners, they will tell you that it is the ultimate arbiter of power at sea, because you can use it to project power into your adversaries' waters. It can operate on its own. It does not need escorts. It can be used to attack the adversaries' warships, merchant ships, attack targets on land. In that sense, it's a very potent platform. And that's one of the reasons why all the P5 countries, the permanent members of the Security Council, all have invested heavily in nuclear-powered attack submarines. And for some reason, we have not been able to cross that magic figure of one SSN, when we need at least 6. But of course, things have begun to move. This project has been in the pipeline for about 2 decades. The project 76, which aims to field 6 nuclear-powered attack submarines, that has taken on some speed in the last couple of months, and we're being told that these orders could be placed soon, and you could have an indigenous nuclear-powered attack, indigenously designed, developed, and constructed nuclear-powered attack submarine. And that could join the Navy, but not in this decade. The earliest you're looking at is something like the early 2030s. So that's this lost decade that we're talking of. And at the same time, when we are in the midst of this lost decade, you have China, whose overall fleet strength in 2035, these are numbers that I'm quoting from the US Office of Naval Intelligence. the numbers that the Chinese Navy is going to project is 76 boats. That is 8 SSBNs, 13 nuclear-powered attack submarines, and 55 conventional submarines. And this is the kind of numbers that you're talking of. I want to go back to the mid-70s when there was this assessment of India's strategic environment, when the government was doing its risk assessments. And that's when they said that the only weapon that the Chinese Navy can deploy against India are its submarines. And that was in the mid-70s. And something very significant happened in 2013, December 2013. The Chinese Navy sent its first nuclear-powered attack submarine on a 2-month-long deployment into the Indian Ocean. And this is that wake-up call that we were all talking of from the 1970s. And that submarine is a Shang-class SSN, one of their latest. Spent 2 months on a distant patrol. I mean, the reason given for it was that it was part of their anti-piracy patrols. And this is amazing. This is possibly the first time in the history of humanity that nuclear submarines have been deployed on anti-piracy patrols. But be that as it may be, that basically tells you the Chinese, that they hide, they bide their capabilities, they bide their time, build up their capabilities. And over the last couple of years, from 2013 on, we've been seeing here that the Chinese have been deploying one major submarine type into the Gulf of Aden for their long distance patrols literally every year. And they're rotating these submarine patrols. Some of them, as you know, they famously called in on Karachi and they called in on in Colombo as well. And the Chinese have made the use of this piracy, the so-called counter-piracy patrols, as an excuse to step up their long-range, long-distance submarine patrols. And this, to my mind, has been the single biggest development in the last couple of years. It's a wake-up call for us, all of us here in India, and it's time for us to pull up our socks. And I want to go back to the Chinese again. They've always had a brown water navy for as long as we can remember, till the time they began this burst of construction in the last decade or so. But way back in the 60s, the Chairman Mao said this thing about a nuclear-powered attack submarine. He said that China must get an SSN even if it takes them 1,000 years. So I was absolutely struck when I read this account of how the Chinese nuclear-powered attack submarine program began. That here is a man who spent his entire life as a guerrilla, a landlocked guerrilla whose most famous achievement is the long march that he did across China, and he has the vision for a nuclear-powered attack submarine, and that's something that we did not think of until a few decades ago. And sure enough, they got their first nuclear-powered attack submarine in 1974, and it was called the Long March. And ever since, the Chinese Navy is invested in its nuclear-powered fleet. They may not be the best boats in the world, they're noisy, they're leaky and all that, but they have been able to leapfrog generations of submarine building, and they are now today where they are, and we today are where we are. That we are yet to get our submarine arm going. And it's a matter of deep concern that we have designed fighter jets, we continue to design them, we have designed main battle tanks, we have designed an aircraft carrier. That's how good we are. But India has not designed a submarine, either conventional or nuclear powered. And that is, to my mind, it's a huge gap in our capabilities. And that is something that we really need to get moving on. And this actually is the topic of the underwater domain awareness. Is not so much about the ocean resources as Suresh Prabhuji mentioned. I mean, nobody can simplify something as he does. He called it the reserve bank of equivalent to the reserve bank. So it's not just about the underwater domain awareness. It's also about the kind of platforms that we need to deploy there, including, for instance, like submarines, and indeed the sensors that we need to get in there, like Admiral Dhawan mentioned. And so to end, I mean, I'm coming to the end of my allotted time, and I want to end by this anecdote of a gym instructor who once I met, and he said that, generally people kind of, they don't build their leg muscles. They focus on their upper bodies. It's a funny thing. He says that nobody works their legs out the way they do their upper bodies or their biceps or something. I said, what's the reason? He said, it's very simple. It's when you ask someone, show me your muscles, he's not going to pick up his thigh muscle or his, his calf muscles. He's going to pick up his bicep and show it to you. So that, I think, in a sense, kind of illustrates the fact that while we've been building up a blue water navy, there are aspects of that blue water navy that we may not have paid adequate attention to, primarily the underwater domain, the building of our own submarines, the construction of our own submarines, indeed the design of our own submarines. This is a very big gap in our capabilities, and I really hope that what the Navy is doing now with the Project 75 India, that we continue this, we decide on this platform and continue to build many numbers of it, because like I mentioned, time is running out. You have our northern neighbor who possibly in the last couple of months has succeeded in getting our focus away from the waters and towards the land boundaries once again. It would be a crying shame if we focused all our energies towards the land boundaries and neglected the sea and indeed our underwater domain that we've been talking about in this fantastic seminar today. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me today, and it was so great to listen to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think it's a true journalist who could have been, who could have spoken so well researched, unbiased, of course, and very, very frank. Thank you very much. And we are very honored to have your perspective. And I think we tried to get multiple perspectives, and I would say we've been able to get it very well, and could have had a better panel than this. Before I request Prafulji to come in, Suresh Prabhuji mentioned about the environment very emphatically, and I would request Dr. Barucha, a very, very senior environmentalist, and he has been part of multiple initiatives related to environment. Sir, 1 minute for you, sir, if you don't mind. We are short of time. Thank you so much.
45 seconds. Thank you very much, Arna. I think one of the things that happened in this very interdisciplinary sort of seminar was that we missed out talking about marine protected areas. That's where all this wealth begins. And that is what we need to really look at as specialist management, because we are still managing this with our forest department with all good intentions. They are not marine biologists. Now, just a very quick assessment of that. We have been looking at mangrove regeneration, but we haven't looked at the splash zone, which is so very rich in species. We've hardly touched upon the coral. We've hardly looked at the coral as breeding spaces of our fisheries. We haven't looked at mud banks, incredibly important ecosystem, and we haven't looked at seagrasses and dugongs and dolphins. And so I think that is where the actual core of underwater domain begins. And that's what we don't have enough expertise for, and we don't have enough finances for. And we need to really look at this. I'm happy Prabhuji is here today, because he's talked about the biodiversity, which is so rich, but that's where it all begins. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Prafulji. Praful Talera ji is our advisor, Blue Economy. But more than that, Prafulji has been my mentor, and MRC has been blessed to have Prafulji with us. Thank you so much. Prafulji, please.
Good evening. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Prafulji, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening. It's an honor to present the vote of thanks on this occasion of the International Biodiversity Day today. I have been associated with the Maritime Research Centre, which I call, if you may allow me to call, a startup think tank promoted by Dr. Commander Arnab Das. I've been very proud to be associated with it right since inception. And it's been a very interesting journey since we started. I call it, I always call it baby steps. You know, it doesn't matter how long the journey is, but if you move in the right direction, which we have been very fortunate to have the blessings and guidance of so many of these distinguished luminaries present today. So all these baby steps have led us to a point today, 4 years later, to a very important juncture where we are getting tremendous traction. And I'm so happy to have this very eminent panel and esteemed panel today on a very wide range of subjects. Thank you, Captain Alok Bansalji, for having laid out the contours and the context for today's webinar. Thank you, sir. A special thank you to the admirable Admiral and one of the finest eloquent and the most eloquent speakers I've ever heard. Admiral Dhawan, thank you for being here and spelling out the security and dimensions of for the webinar today for a safe, secure, and a sustainable oceans. Thank you, Pramod Chaudhary, my elder brother, I've been associated for the last 20 years, for his excellent presentation on the bioeconomy, the circular economy, which is emerging, and the very pioneering work he's been doing in that area. Congratulations, Dr. Chaudhary, for the George Washington Craver Award. Congratulations. And I would like to thank all the special invitees, Dr. Chenraji Roychen. Thank you, Chenraji, for promising to associate with us. We look forward to a very mutually beneficial relationship in Bangalore with the Jain University and so many other entities associated with the strategic manufacturing sector and the heavy industries which are being merged. Now, for the Sector Skill Council, we hope to build up a good capacity, and an institution like yours would be an asset for us. Thank you, Rajan and Narendra, for your inputs on the blue economy and the blue bonds. Rajan, I look forward to working with the CII. We are already engaging the CII, the Society for Indian Defence Manufacturers, and with the CII in a larger perspective to work for the India at 75 program. Thank you, Captain Rupade. I take it from, and a special thank you to Dr. Suresh Prabhuji for his encouraging and very enlightened inputs. Sir, thank you very much. We look forward to your continued support and guidance. Once again, I thank all the dignitaries for attending today's webinar, and a big thank you to all the speakers. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a very nice evening and take care. Be safe. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prafulji. We had a very, very diverse and a very, very eminent panel.
I just forgot Mr. Unitan. Sorry. Thank you to Sandeep Unitan for a great overview and how we need to, for that analogy of the gym analogy, how we need to develop our sea legs. Those are not visible. And we at the MRC have been working to create, we want to propagate this idea that the Americans believe that if they can dominate the three global commons, one being the oceans, the blue waters, the second is the cyberspace, and the third is the outer space. So we at MRC want to submit this to the Honorable Minister today to seek his support that we should create an international inter-university center, which is a center of global excellence for the underwater domain and for the cybersecurity. I can speak for that because I was part of the cybersecurity delegation to Israel. So we seek your support, sir, to move this idea. And in fact, the Honorable Raksha Rajya Mantri, Dr. Bhamre, when he visited us for a program which was held with Pune University and MRC jointly, had supported this idea to create an inter-university center for the underwater domain. And last but not least, I would I would end on a very happy note that Dr. Das, Arnab Das's paper has been selected to be presented at the International Maritime Organization conference, which will be held in London. And it will be an India paper. It will go as an India paper. So that's the good news I'd like to share with all of you. And it's a great pleasure being working with Arnab Das, and we seek your support and guidance. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste. Commander, your voice, please. Unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Prafulji. Thank you so much, the panelists. I mean, we've had a very, very distinguished panel. The special invitees who made very good interventions, and most importantly, the audience. I'm sorry, I could not mention, but we've had very, very eminent panel, even secretaries at the Government of India. I'm sorry, I'm not naming because otherwise it will become too long. But we've had very, very senior people in the panel, and we are very, very fortunate to have your support. And we will continue to have the webinars because multiple aspects need to be discussed. And we always seek your guidance, and we will be also coming up with a webinar report, which we'll be sharing with everybody. Thank you so much. Admiral sir, thank you very much. The panel, Captain Bansal sir, Sandeep Unitan, thank you very much. Pramod Chaudhary sir, Suresh Prabhu sir has, I think, left. And thank you very much all for joining us and making this webinar a success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnab. See you then.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Pathak sir, good to see you.
Arnav, good work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hey, Das sir, thank you very much for the lovely invite.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Pleasure, sir.